Hello beautiful, welcome back to Nat's Beautiful Life. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the rest of my July wrap up. If you are new to this channel, hello, my name is Natasha. I do videos like this, art journaling and anything else I want to do a video about, because hey, why not? If you want to see what I read earlier in the month, I have a mid-month wrap up because I have read a lot of books this month. I will have that linked up in the cards and down below. Here are the books that I read earlier in the month, and so if you want to hear me talk about them, then go check that out after you've checked this out. Also, I'm going to put up a picture here of my reading journal for July. It'll have all the books I read, and I have page numbers if I did audio or a regular book, and then the genre and all of that. That's the kind of notes that I keep. And then you see the little F and little check marks underneath it. That means that I finished the book. I finished, I count this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books this month. I had a really great reading month, and I am happy to share that with you. All right, so as I discussed or mentioned in my first mid-month wrap up, I mentioned something called Double Trouble, which is basically where I am taking authors and reading 2 books by that author this month. It was not at first like a conscious thing that I did, but then I noticed that that's what was happening, and so that I had to make it happen. So 10 of the books, of the 14 books that I finished this month, are written by 5 authors, so I did 2 books by each. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick up where I left off in the other video. I think I did talk about Bad Astronauts, I think, last time, but I had ended on, I hadn't finished The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett by Annie Lyons when I was in that video, but I finished it. It's a heartwarming kind of book. The beginning, the past, it's one of the only books where I have enjoyed the present timeline more than the past timeline. The past timeline is very depressing and sad, and the present is very heartwarming and sweet. So if something like that is in your wheelhouse, then pick it up. It's a good time. It's cute. And the audiobook narrator was not my favorite, but it could have been just a me thing, because I think it was just the main character, but when she did voices for other characters, I didn't mind. So I think it was a me thing. Anyway, let's move on to the ones I haven't mentioned at all yet. Vintage 1954 by Antoine Lorraine. This is the second Antoine Lorraine I have read this month. Definitely not the second Antoine Lorraine I've read. This one is, I think, probably one of my favorite by this author. So we have this family that owns this building, and they're cleaning out some of the things in their cellar, and a guy finds a bottle of wine. This group of people that he has, I can't get into details because you got to read the book, but this is the beginning, kind of the beginning of the book. When you get to this part, they're meeting together, and one of the people in this group of 5 people or 4 people recognizes that bottle and says, hey, there's a story to that vintage of wine. This guy in this year in Paris swears he saw a flying saucer, and then this was the bottle of wine or whatever, the vintage they were doing at the time in the 70s. That was the 1950s, and in the 70s this same man drank some of the wine, and his dog, and the dog drank the wine too, and then they disappeared. And that is what happened. So basically, when they drink this wine together, just laughing over the story, being appreciative for helping each other out, they wake up the next morning and realize that they are in 1954. So they've time traveled back, and they've got to figure out how to get back to the present. And then they kind of learn about the bottle of wine and the UFOs, the alien kind of things. And it's not exactly what you really are thinking of, but It is the most precious book. It is fun, and there's family dynamics, there's found family dynamics, and there's also just, it's just a heartwarming book. It was just a good time. I mean, it's a zany kind of whimsical premise to start with, so you know you're gonna have a good time when you get to it. So I highly recommend this one. I also think this is a good one to start with if you're starting off with Antoine Lorraine. It is a French translated to English book. All right, so the next book that I finished, another translated book, In the Midst of Winter by Isabel Allende. This is the third book I think I've read of hers, and the second one I've read this month by this author. She is fast becoming, or has become, like I said, this is only the third book that I finished by her. I'm currently listening to one by her. Definitely one of my favorite authors. I love her writing. I love her storytelling. This one is not my favorite of them because I don't like this way of book structure. That is the only thing. It is a 3 people together on an adventure, let's just say that, and then while you're doing this, they're flashing back and telling their individual stories. Their individual stories, especially one of the characters, like the youngest character, is so powerful that I just need that book. Like, I literally wanted the books that went with each character instead of like these little snippets. But other than that, this book, you know, what happens is great. The writing is great. The camaraderie of these people is great. I laughed out loud. And some of the things, like I said, that happen to these characters in their lives is just, again, just deep and powerful. And what brings these 3 people together is interesting. I did enjoy this book. Definitely could be either, I think I gave it the high 3 stars or maybe a 4-star, only because, like I said, this structure of storytelling is not my favorite, but as far as the stories and the plot and everything, it was really good, and I do recommend it. And again, just proving to me, even if it's a type of storytelling that I don't enjoy, I enjoy everything about the book. If that makes sense. So definitely highly recommend anything by Isabel Allende. All right, the next thing I have was this one here, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is the second Gabrielle Zevin I read this month. And the third one that I've read by her. She wrote one of my favorite books of all time, The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. And what I love about her, and I've mentioned this I think in the previous book, is that she always is going to write her stories in a unique manner. So The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery, in the beginning of the book, he tells someone that books of short stories are his favorite, so the book is told in short story form. The story, or the Young Jane Young, that one is told normally, and then there's a section where you've got, it's between emails, is the how it's written. The other section is a choose your own adventure book, and then you go back to normal storytelling. This one is about Sadie and Sam. They become best friends, very young ages. They get separated, they come back together, but they grow up to be game developers, and they have a company together and all of that. There's a whole section in here towards the end that is written in gameplay. Was not super enjoyable for me to read because I don't really play games like that. I don't play games at all, really. But I appreciate the writing and the writing style and just the literary prowess of this writer. I love her writing. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I kind of went up and down with my rating in my head. Just because there's a lot of wokeness in this book. It's not in your face like you be woke, but there's a lot of wokeness, and I hate that because I'm like, why can't we just all be who we are and everybody just get over it? But you know, people are different. But it was like, if you read this, you'll see what I mean. But that is what really kept irking me about it. But the characters, the story, the feelings, the everything in this book is just classic Gabrielle Zevin, and I love this book so much. I feel like it'll have to be a reread for me at some point because I just want to appreciate it even more. Just her writing is just phenomenal, but these characters really get at you. So yeah, I just, and the thing is, I don't really want to get into the details of the book because I really want you to go in sort of blind. You have, like I said, Sadie and Sam. There are other characters that you fall in love with in this book as well, but they kind of bond over video games when they're children. There's some like illness and things involved, and then they go to, when they go to college, they reconnect and they build a video game together, and it's about friendship and the deep love that friendship brings, and it is basically following them through decades, like from the time that they're children to the time that they're like in their 40s or almost in their 40s is where the timeline of this book happened. So I just enjoyed this book. It was a joy to pick up every time I knew I had a second to just delve into reading. It was a good time. So I highly recommend it. Again, I could have docked some points for the wokeness, but all in all, because of just the writing style, the uniqueness of some of the writing, and just the characters, and how I felt about them and the way that they invoked feelings and things like that, made me just love that book. So I do recommend that one, and I recommend anything that is by Gabrielle Zevin. Go pick it up. She's an amazing writer. The next book is an audiobook, and that was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I wanted to do 2 books by this author this month, but the waiting list at the library for the other book was 12 weeks. I didn't realize that, but whatever. I went into this book not really knowing anything, and I'm glad I did. This book is basically a family drama, but also there's a friendship dynamic. But I know that we all feel in our hearts that the most villainous character in any book is Dolores Umbridge, but I believe that Mrs. Richardson is right up there with it, which is the mother of, I can't remember her first name, but the what is her name? Helena Richardson is right up there with her, because she's one of those people who thinks she's doing good by just, you have to read the book, by just being a kind, rich white person who doesn't really get that involved and doesn't really see race or anything, or poverty, you know. She thinks she's doing her part. But oh, if they step up, then again, this is a problem. I couldn't stand her, and I feel like I've known lots of ladies like her. But there was also some very like heartstring, like it brought up some interesting concepts and some interesting topics. Such as, there's a child that's left on a doorstep of a firehouse, and then she decides to change her mind. And I guess this takes place in the 90s, so things are a little bit different now. And then you have, this family that's taken this child in, and then all of these other things come up, and the lady wants her daughter back, but she lives in poverty, and it's like, when she was in another state, California, when she lived in San Francisco, this woman, this Chinese character who didn't speak English very well, but she also spoke Chinese. She had a very good job in San Francisco because they needed people who spoke Chinese. And she worked as a secretary. And then when she got to, middle America, all she could get was a Chinese restaurant. And so it's just kind of like looking at those types of things. So it's a look at class and race and money and things like that. But then there's also a single mother and her daughter that move in, and then you just hear all of the stories. And I liked this book a lot more than I thought I would. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I'd say it's a high 3. I don't like family dramas as much as some people do, but I think this book was just unique in that it wasn't just chick lit, it made you think. And I mean, not too deep. I mean, it's not like a deep book, but I enjoyed this book. I got into it. I was rooting for, there's also like a group of young people, you know, you're reading the Richardson kids, and then also the kid of the single mom that lives in one of their rentals. You know, they all become friends, and it's just an interesting book. I say go into it blind. No, it's a lot of family drama, and some of the family are conflicted not only with their place, but their privilege, and all of that. It was just, yeah, it was just beyond infuriating at times, but all in all, a good book, and I am looking forward to picking up something else by this author. Hopefully the audiobook will be available soon. Yeah, but it was kind of surprising because it's been on my radar to read, but it wasn't really a priority, and then all of a sudden I just read it and I was like, oh, glad I did. All right, next, Early Warning by Jane Smiley. This is the second Jane Smiley book that I read this month, and also just my second Jane Smiley book. This is the follow-up to, what's it called? The first book is called Some Luck, and these books, there's another book in the series. It is out, but the audiobook, I haven't seen that available anywhere. And since I've done the first 2 in audiobook form, I'd like to do the third one in audiobook form, so I'm probably going to have to buy it from somewhere. That's annoying. Anyway, it's following a family for 100 years. So we start out in the 1920s with a couple who's in their 20s and their child, and then the branches happen. So they have children, their children have children, and all of that. And so within the second book, some of the original children are dying from some like cancer or whatever else. And so I'm like finding myself feeling like grieving, I guess. Not really like, you know, seriously, but just like feeling nostalgic for these characters as well, because they're so well done. When I first listened to the first book, and the beginning of this book was the same, it's a little boring because you're just following them along as they're living their lives. And some people, like some years, some lives are just everyday things. They're not big grandiose things, but within a family, within these generations, within, you know, anybody's lifetime, big things do happen. And when you get hooked on certain characters and the big things in their life and the results and all of that, then you really want to find out what happened. So there are certain children of the original couple that I'm more attached to than others, and then there are some of the grandchildren there's 1 or 2 that I'm kind of like want to follow a little bit more, and then we're getting into great grandchildren now. So I want to see what happens in the third book and see what happens with this family. It really is just not just the family dynamics, but you're also getting the dynamics of the U.S. during the time as well, because they're experiencing these things. So they're experiencing the Great Depression. They are farmers, and so you've got one of the family members, the children, that really stays into farming, is successful, and then you see things changing within the farming communities and how land prices and certain crop prices went up and down. You've got some in war, when Vietnam, and also World War II. You've also got, you know, when Reagan came in, so a lot of the different changes that were happening in the country in the 80s. And so these books take you through different timelines. This particular book, which was Early Warning, stopped in 1987. So the third book will take us through 1988 through 2020, I believe. So all I can say is give it a shot. These are 18-hour audiobooks, but I sped them up to like 1.20. The audiobook narrator makes it better. She's wonderful, and you can catch it, even speeding it up like that, and just kind of enjoy what happens. She doesn't change her voice that often or that drastically as some of the other audiobook narrators, but because of the way the different characters speak, because of Jane Smiley's writing, you know who's speaking and what's going on. And I just have really enjoyed this series. It's a good time, and I'll kind of be sad for it to be over, but really looking forward to seeing what happens with this family. All right, the next book is Born by Jeff Vandermeer, the second Jeff Vandermeer of the month. I've talked about in my previous video that I love me some Jeff Vandermeer weirdness. He writes weird sci-fi, and I'm here for it. And this one was even weirder than Hummingbird Salamander, which I read earlier in the month. I've also read the Southern Reach trilogy, which is Annihilation, and the 3 books that, in fact, is right here, Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance. I loved that trilogy, just breezed right through it, binged it. So this, I believe, is another series, but I don't know if they're like companion novels or like continuations. This one, unless you're one of these people who starts reading this book and you're like, this is my jam, I would say you're gonna have to get 100 pages in for you to really feel like it's going anywhere, anything's really like you're getting into the world we were promised. So I almost DNF'd it, but then I was like, no, I'm gonna give it another shot. So I picked it up again, and then I got invested, and then I got interested, and then I couldn't put it down because I wanted to know what happened. So Born is a creature. So we're in maybe an alternate reality. We don't know. We're on a scorched kind of earth, but it's not really super scorched. I don't know how to explain it. We're in a barren wasteland. That is the part of earth that they are in. There is a company that came in to try to help or take over or do whatever. They did a lot of experiments, and they created this giant monster named Mord, and we are following Rachel, who is a scavenger, and Wick is her partner that lives. They live in these, like, they call them the balcony cliffs. It's basically an abandoned apartment building. And one day while she's scavenging, so he's like was thrown out of the company before the company fell. Like, everything's fallen, everything's just crap now. He worked for the company in biotech, and so he still kind of builds biotech in his like laboratory at home, and she scavenges like parts and food and things like that for them. And so one day while she's away, she finds something she thinks might be a plant or it might be biotech. She doesn't know. She brings it home, and then it starts to grow and all of that. That's not typically my thing, but as I continued to read this and Born continued to grow and develop and all of that, I got really invested and interested. So that's why I say, if you get started in this book and then you're like, I don't know if I can do it, just keep going at least 100 pages and see, you know, if you're into what's gonna happen. I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars. I think I liked Hummingbird Salamander better, even though it was even more pointless than this one. But I feel like the thriller aspect of Hummingbird Salamander was just like kept me going. But yeah, I do highly recommend Jeff Vandermeer. I think that Annihilation is a good place to start with him. I am thinking of picking up Dead Astronauts, which is the second book in the series, but the reviews are all over the place for that. Like, some people are like, I love this and I hated that. Like, literally, like, they loved this and they hated that. Well, you know, I'm just like, you know what, maybe I should just see for myself. Whatever. It's not like I've never read a book that I didn't like super love before, but could appreciate. So I definitely could appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to picking up some more by Mr. Vandermeer. Wow, I am so glad I did that mid-month wrap up because this video would have been so long if I didn't. We're at the last book, guys. The last book I actually read and finished in one day because I had the time and I really wanted to read this book, and it's not super long. It has been on my most anticipated releases book list since I saw it, and I have seen mixed reviews. I have seen every time somebody talks about it on their YouTube channel, I skip over it because I don't want to be biased. And then I picked it up myself, and that is Hide by Kirsten White. This is, I'd say, a cozy horror. Let me just tell you something about this book. If you want to enjoy the read kind of a person, then you'll be okay with this. By page 30, I had figured out the entire plot, pretty much everything except for minor details like who did what. But I pretty much figured out the entire plot, knew what was going to happen, knew what was going on, but that was okay because I actually enjoyed reading the process. You've got 14 people who they think they are part of a game show where they are playing hide and seek in an abandoned amusement park, and every day 2 people get eliminated. They think that means they've been found, and there is so much more going on. And yeah, there are little hints here and there of things, so you'll probably figure it out quite quickly. It's very similar to a certain Mr. Tremblay work that they made a movie about. So just know that. But I did enjoy reading it to a point. When it got to the end-ish, I felt like it was dragging a little, but I understand why that was happening. It was just kind of make the story unique and also like flesh out some of the rest of the stuff. But it got real dark. When I read the acknowledgments, which I don't normally do, I read the acknowledgments, and she based some things on like the Minotaur myth. So you'll pick that up. But yeah, if you want to read a cozy, easy, kind of semi-horror book that is predictable and you can guess some things, but you know, there's some lovable characters in here. Like, some of these contestants are really lovable and you are rooting for them to make it, and just, you know, there's all of this going on. So there are like people you're rooting for. And our main character that we're following her name is Mackenzie. She goes by Mac. She has a past all of her own, where her father actually murdered her whole family, and she hid to not get killed. And so she kind of has guilt from that, and then she's in this hide and seek game, and then when they realize what's going on, she's like, maybe I should just whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of little things in this book that I think are interesting, and that were, like I said, it was a stormy day yesterday, and I'm filming this like on August 1st. I know it's going up much later than that, but it was a really stormy day yesterday, and there was thunder and lightning and stuff, and I had time. I picked up, read the book. My camera cut off. So anyway, it was a nice, like, rainy day read. Again, it got a little darker than I normally prefer, but that's all. Like, it was a 3-star. It could have been on the low side of 3, but take that as you will. I won't say it's a horrible book. I think what people are fussing about with their bad reviews, because there's good reviews too, with their bad reviews, is that it's predictable. Like, you've seen this before, but again, it was just kind of a book. And And sadly, I think this is my first Kirsten White, so I want to pick up something else by her just to make sure, you know, that this is a fluke, because a lot of people speak very highly of her writing and what she does. Okay, that is it. I've gone on so long that my camera actually quit on me at one point, so I think that means we're done. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon right here on Nat's Beautiful Life. Let me know in the comments what you read this month, and if you've read any of these, if you plan on reading any of these, any of those things, and that is all. Have a great day, gorgeous.